Naturally, I went to click on the intro video and I clicked on something different. So that's how we're gonna start off tonight. So I had it sitting there ready. So without further ado, this is how we do things, Matt. It can't be an issue a week without an issue. I mean, everybody knows that.
We're not as legitimate as the Sticks In podcast, so
yeah.
I've got everybody fooled, man. I've got everybody fooled.
So obviously we have one of those co-hosts on, so we got to give him his due. And an IL. I don't know if we want to say IL. I don't know how you want to phrase it. But we're glad to have you on, obviously, because I always want to get the national perspective, because I get a lot of the local crap with the political Syracuse writers that have to say certain things to get media access. Right. But I'm curious what the national stuff is. But we'll first dive into you. How did you get started into lacrosse as a whole?
Well, first, thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate you inviting me to be here. I got into lacrosse, so I grew up in a small town here in Connecticut called New Canaan, where lacrosse is like the sport that everybody plays here. Lacrosse is king. The baseball program here is dwindling. Everybody plays lacrosse. When I was a kid, you started usually around second, third grade. That's when I started is third grade. And I played, all the way through high school, played a little bit in the college and everything. And then after school, I kind of wanted to stay close to it because I love the sport so much. So I got into coaching a little bit, first at the youth level in my hometown. Okay. And then at that time, the club lacrosse hadn't been invented yet, but it was first kind of being felt out as a thing that was happening in other places. And Darienne's head coach, a man named Jeff Braymeyer, started a program called Connecticut Chargers, and he was looking for coaches for that. And I got connected to that through a friend of mine, where I coached a summer for Coach Braymeyer. And then doing that, he invited me to join and help coach at Darien High School. So I coached at Darien High School for a number of years, did some time with the freshmen, some time with the JV, some time with the varsity. So it was kind of all over the place there. And then after that, it was I needed to get a real job that paid adult money, because I was getting ready to try and convince the then girlfriend, now wife, that I wasn't a deadbeat. So got into community journalism and started writing about it, but writing about basically anything in the world. But around that time, I also, because I just wasn't around lacrosse enough for my own taste, I basically out of the clear blue sky emailed Matt Kinnear and Terry Foy at IL, and then Jazz, Chris Jaskremski at then College Cross, and was like, do you guys need somebody to cover games, to write about it, whatever? And for IL, it was like, well, you live close to Yale and pretty close to Army, you can do those games for us sometimes. So I started doing that. And that started kind of just growing my network, and it just kind of took off from there. It just kind of developed a mind of its own. So just kept staying as close as I could to the game and making as many friends and connections as I could in the game. And now here I am.
Where did you play in college, Dan?
I played
a couple years at a school called Trinity, and that's here in Connecticut as well.
Yep. Yeah. D3 program. D3,
that's
right. What up?
D3 Kings.
I didn't see who won the Christopher Newport Tufts game.
Oh my God. You guys didn't see the end of this? This was bonkers.
No.
So Christopher Newport tied it up on extra man with 20 seconds to go in regulation. Game goes to overtime. Tufts wins the overtime faceoff, which is not easy to do against Warner Cavanis. So Tufts wins the faceoff. Christopher Newport causes a turnover. They go down. I don't remember the names of who did it, but a Christopher Newport kid takes a shot. It goes bar down, and the players are like, game over. And the refs are like, no, it never went in. Tufts goalie picks the ball up. They clear. They're going the other way. They score in transition. Tufts wins. Game over. Refs go to review it, but we're talking D3 ball here. This isn't cameras everywhere.
Yeah.
The view we had from that stream of that was where the stat guy sits. That's what the refs got to look at too. So they looked. They were like, "Yeah, I think we got it right. That's it."
That's brutal.
Bonkers ending for an insane game. But yeah, love the D3 ball, man.
Heck yeah.
What was the school you rooted for growing up?
What was the school I rooted for growing up?
Yeah, college wise. If you had to pick one.
I don't know. We watched a lot of when I was growing up, I was a kid in the 90s. The programs to watch were Princeton and Syracuse. The Princeton Hughes game every year was like the gem. I have like fond memories of watching. Like I remember watching those Princeton teams with their attack of Jesse Hubbard, John Hess, and Chris Massey, and being like, this is the pinnacle of lacrosse. And then as I got older and everything, we really enjoyed watching Hopkins play. We loved watching guys and this is still like the way I watch sports is I tend to not have like favorite teams. The only exception I make is that I'm a Knicks fan, but otherwise, like, yeah, I know. Otherwise, I tend to watch sports and I tend to gravitate towards teams who have players where I feel like they're going to do something that I haven't seen before. So like, I always loved watching like Kyle Harrison, and we loved watching Mikey Powell. We love watching guys like that who were different. We love watching Curtis Dixon at Delaware because it was like, this is just a different animal. He's doing other things that other people aren't doing. Eventually Peter Baum at Colgate was a guy where it was like, you have to make time to watch Colgate games for this kid. So like, those are the players that I always tended to gravitate towards wherever they played. Princeton I loved watching BJ Prager. It's kind of like a deep cut, but I was like, I've never seen somebody it always makes it like it's so easy to get open against the best defenses in America, but he was just always open inside somehow. So guys like that, where it was like, they changed the way you think about the game and everything. And then like my favorite player ever is Joel White, because he was a player who changed the way I thought about when I was a kid. I played defense growing up. And like, when you're coached as a kid, like if you pick the ball up and you run over the midfield line, it's like get it to the attack and then get your ass back to the other end of the field. And so I remember watching Syracuse games I was at a game and I remember watching Joel White pick up a ball and run it forward and get it to the attack and then keep going. And I was like, oh, that's allowed. Like there's guys who don't have to like turn around. Like there's guys who can do this differently. And Joe White like finished his lane and got the attackman fed him as a cutter, and he went around the world with it and put it behind his back into the goal. And I was like, this is changing the way I think.
What are we doing here, right? Like,
it's like there players like that who change the way you think about what a position can do, what a player can do, and guys like him and Scott Ratliff and everything. To this day, when coaches are looking for like an LSM, if they're recruiting an LSM, like they'll say things like, well, I'm looking for like a Scott Ratliff type. I'm looking for like a Joel White type. And you know what that means. Like those are the guys I gravitate towards. Guys who they've changed the position or the game so much that their name stays attached to it.
I have to humble brag. I did play against Joel in high school.
Yeah,
they crushed us.
Hey, we aren't going to talk about that though.
Yeah, we didn't win too many games, so they beat us pretty bad.
Yeah.
And most people don't know he played short stick mid. Like he didn't play defense until he went to Syracuse. So, which is kind of cool. Which is even crazier. Like,
I was going to say,
I mean, he won midfielder of the year as a poll. It's just a different kind of dude.
Insane.
I was going to say, even as Syracuse fans now, we compare every midi to Joel White. It's like, okay, can they do that?
Yep.
Matt, obviously we talked about Billy Dwan enough. Okay, can he be the Joel White? That's it's just the way, like you said, Dan, it's a great way to say it though. He's a person who immortalized that position, and Ratliff obviously did it as well. There's a bunch of names. Like we can just go through that names and it'll take 20 minutes. But there are a lot of guys who glorified that position, I guess would say. Like you said, it was just pass it over and now it's okay, go down and score.
Yeah, it's again, it's like for me, watching the guys who there's an expectation of what it means to be this play this position or do things a certain way at that time in the sport. And then there are guys who shatter that perception. And those are the guys I gravitate towards.
Yep.
Matt, I know you had a question about IL. I don't know if you want to.
I guess
you had that.
Talk about your experience of working there and what that was like, and And then maybe after that, like, I know you transition more away from that. Like, I guess why the move then to kind of move away from it and that kind of stuff? Like, talk about all that.
To Inside Lacrosse?
Yeah.
So I was never like an Inside Lacrosse employee or anything. Like I said, like, I kind of reached out to them. I mean, I was an employee in the sense that like I do freelance work for them, where it's like, hey, do you guys need coverage of this or that? And they'll say yes, no, and we work it out. But I don't have like a contract with them or anything like that. I never have.
Okay.
But I've done. So like I'm 100% like for sale. I freelance for everybody. I still do stuff for IL sometimes. I have constant dialogues with Terry and a lot of the crew there and everything. There's probably stuff in the near future that I'll do for them. I'm probably going to pitch them on the idea, Army's playing Carolina at Mikey Stadium an hour away from me. I'm going to see if they want me to go or if they want to come from Baltimore. I don't know.
Right.
It's up to you guys. But, I've always been someone who I love writing about the game enough that I'll do it for anybody. And I say to people, like, if you put a lacrosse game near me somewhere, I'm going to go. It doesn't matter what level it is or anything like that. Like I'm probably just going to be there. So I still do stuff for IL. USA Lax Mag has come up with some cool opportunities. I was recently at, you guys know I was at the Dome for the Hopkins game to do that and go to Buffalo. And I have some other stuff kind of in the pipe for them. I love doing stuff for New England Lacrosse Journal because it lets me stay close to the teams that are, been part of my life since I was a kid. So I get to go cover like the high school angle here, whether it's prep school or private school. You know me, I always stay in the public schools. So I get to still do that and cover some of like the smaller colleges here in New England and stuff like that it's tougher to do like the big national exposure for. But if it's New England and it's like decently high level, NELJ and Kyle Devitt there has been awesome for me. I've known him for a long time, but he's, giving me like a standing green light to do anything New England, which is one of the coolest things in the world.
Awesome.
So, so it's been fun to kind of work with all these people in the course of my doing this. And then obviously it's nice to kind of be your own boss a little bit and do the sticks in thing too.
Yeah. So you've probably had a chance to write about a lot of things, interview a whole slew of people. I guess maybe talk about a couple of your favorite memories or experiences you've had, whether it wasn't a certain interview or going to a certain game or something like that.
I've had a couple that have been kind of surreal or weird things. The first time I ever broke a piece of news was weird to me, where I was like, I was like, I can't believe this. Do I know something that nobody else knows? And it should be out there. It's weird to have that kind of happen. So like the first time I did that, I can't even remember honestly what it was. What was it? It might have been like a PLL location or something like that from like their first year or something that they were like going to play on Long Island or something. I know it was like, we really need to get to the bottom of that. Like PLL Long Island, no way. But like that kind of stuff. And then, there are times where I've had like a love-hate relationship with it because there's sometimes like, covering lacrosse the way I do it can be kind of like, I put myself kind of on an island and I do it, by design. I strive to be like as objective as possible, which means sometimes going things alone. So, it can be kind of lonely sometimes and it can be tough to do. And I have days where I want to like throw my phone in the ocean and never do this again. And there have been times where I've been public about like having those feelings. And like, I won't share like, the people who reached out to me or stuff like that. But I've had enough moments in doing this where you get a message from somebody who you had no idea even that they knew who you were, and that and they say what you do is valuable and we want you to keep doing it. Every time that happens, I feel really good about it. There have been some other cool ones. I mean, most recently at the Dome, I think I mentioned it in the piece I wrote, but after the game, I went to the Orange Crate place. I ran into Casey Powell there and we talked for a while. And then Casey invited me to dinner and I went out to dinner with Casey Powell. Like, it's just not something where you envision that, like, as somewhere you're going to be, when you start as like doing a random little game story one day. And then like in the blink of an eye, you're Casey Powell's like, you want to come to dinner? You're just like, okay. That was very cool. And then I will say, like, I was at street lacrosse in Philadelphia with the PLL this summer, and there was like doing that and talking to players that were there and then kids that were there and other people kind of consuming it. Was cool. And it was like, you look around and you're just like, you're interviewing a pro player, and like Jeffrey Wright is standing next to you, and you're just like, lacrosse has taken me to some interesting places, man. And there's that happens sometimes where you're just like, this is not some place I thought I would end up being. So like, that was cool. And then like very recently, to plug sticks in, like I had Miles Baliotti on for an interview, and Miles is Ohio State student manager and member of their team and everything. And he has autism, and he's like very much a forward pushing person about autism awareness and involving people with autism in college athletics. And, he'll tell you he aspires to be like work for an NFL team as a coach and stuff like that. And publishing that interview, I got a lot of really nice notes from families or people who are, have somebody, somebody with autism or related to the game somehow through that. And that was moving and touching for me as somebody who has a brother with autism. Like, that story I thought really was a special one for me to do too. So I really enjoyed that conversation. That's the most recent, I think, one where I was like, I feel good about that. I feel really good about that.
I just listened to that yesterday at work when I was getting work done. So
I was gonna say I'm gonna listen to it tomorrow. The full transparency. Matt and I were kind of talking about it before, and I was like, I have
That's
to
fine.
listen. I have to listen to that.
I'm still trying to find out. Miles told me he got in trouble with Coach Myers once because his goal celebrations was RKOing people on the sideline. I was like, Miles, I need you to tell me who was getting the RKOs over there. I mean, like he didn't
like Jack Myers or somebody.
What I really want to know is like, did you RKO Mitchell Pelkey or not? Like,
oh my God,
that's
what we all want to know.
Did you RKO Mitchell Pelkey or not?
And some people are probably hoping, some people maybe not.
Everybody's got a dog in that fight and wants to know, Miles.
Yep. That's fantastic.
So, specifically related to your Syracuse piece, you obviously talked about it. I reread it just to make sure I was reading everything right. Was that your first experience, or
it was my first time there? Yeah, it was my first time there. That's kind of like the angle with that piece, and with the time I went to Buffalo. Was go to some place. I pitched to them to USA Lax Mag was I want to go places that I've never been that are regarded as like hallowed or special places to see a lacrosse game, and just write about what it's like to be there for other people who haven't been or might not, have regular opportunities to go. So that was kind of the genesis of the Buffalo piece. And the Buffalo piece, I think, got a lot of, I was lucky enough that a lot of people seemed to really enjoy it. And so they were like, let's do more of these. And I was like, well, for the NLL, you need to send me to Halifax or Denver or Calgary or Vancouver. And unless you're picking up airfare, this is going to be not a whole lot of these pieces that are coming. But I was like, however, March 9th in the Dome, Hopkins Q's, that's the rivalry game. That's a special venue, and I've never been there. So why don't we do that? And they said, yeah. So I bought a ticket. I said when I was going, it was like, was it you, Matt, who even said it was just like, if you're going to be in the press box, come down. And I was like, no, I don't do press box for these.
Yeah, that was me.
Because if I do press box, then I don't learn what I need to learn to write the piece well. Yeah. So I buy a ticket and I go through I do the fan experience as thoroughly as I can do the fan experience.
The real question is, if you had to use the bathroom, did you use the troughs or did you use the stall?
I used the troughs. Again, this is a fan experience. But I wrote about it in the thing. I was like, that's one of those things where it's like, you walk in there, you don't expect to see it. The same way when you walk in through a revolving door in a stadium. Like that's like, you know what I mean? Like didn't expect to have to go through a revolving door. And those kind of things, it's like they're supposed to be there. You know what I mean? Like they're definitely not new, but they're supposed to be.
Yep.
I was gonna say, Matt, I remember the wind tunnel. I know you probably remember that walking out. You didn't get to experience that, Dan, but every time you walked out of the Dome, it felt like it was gonna blow you 20 feet. Just the suction of the air.
Yeah.
When they replace the roof, it doesn't do that anymore.
Yeah. It's not as fun anymore. I'll just say it that way, trying to push people out the way.
And Dan got the new seats too.
Yeah, I was gonna say
the actual seats instead of the benches. So
was it benches before? Oh,
yes.
Man.
Yeah.
And on the third level, there's not even back. There wasn't even backs. It was just the seat. So
Just the bleacher.
yeah, yeah. That was a nice upgrade that they did.
Besides writing the article, though, what was one of your takeaways? Like, I know obviously you talked a lot about the experience and how it is to walk through it from the fan side, going to Club 44, experience a little bit of that. What was the takeaway of like the fan base as a whole? And
the fan base as a whole, I thought I kind of mentioned this a little bit in the piece, but obviously it's an educated fan base, which is fun to be part of.
Sometimes I'll just say it that way. Sometimes
yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, what I mean is like every fan base is going to cheer when there's a goal scored.
Yeah.
But the big cheers from the Q's crowd are like, like Trey Deer grinding out that ground ball on the end line to like keep a possession going. Like they know that is as big of a play as a goal in some moments. And so the cheers for that being loud are cool and everything. The game was a bit of a ref show. Not to like get into the weeds on that, but I thought the fans letting the refs had it was appropriate. And, I think both fan bases would say the refs were bad in that game, which maybe means the refs were good because they were consistent. I don't know. But, probably letting, the ref show was resulted in some loud noise. And, I think the fans, there were moments where I expected it to be louder. There were moments where it was loud and I didn't think it was going to be as loud as it got. You know what I mean? So like it was definitely a cool experience. The crowd was big. I think they announced 8,600. I was talking to like a staff person there where they said they were expecting ballpark 8,000. So it sounds like they got what they were expecting to get.
Right.
But, everybody's dialed into the game. That's another thing that I found when I went to Buffalo is like, if you were to walk out to the concourse during games, it would be like a ghost town out there. Like there's nobody out there. Everybody's in their seat. Excuse me. While the game is going on. Nobody wants to miss a minute. It's not like going to some other venues or, some other places in pro sports where, the stadium's sold out, but it looks like it's half full because everybody's out buying, food or buying gear or whatever.
I mean, I was going to say that Matt, you obviously saw where I sit. So I sit kind of at the 50-yard line, and I will tell you, people will boo if you get up to go get food, and they will literally scream at you if you get up during the game. And it's great. Like I love it because they like you can't get up unless it's out of bounds.
They need you, man.
Yeah, and they will literally they're season ticket holders that will literally scream at you if you walk in the aisle, not even in front of them, in the aisle.
I believe it. I believe it for sure.
It's funny that you mentioned that point of like during the game, like no one's up and around because I used to work merchandise at the Dome because years ago I used to work at the university and that was like an extra job I had on campus. And I used to always love working lacrosse games because in the store it would be empty. So I would just sit in the doorway and watch the game because there'd be no one in the store. So I could just get paid to watch lacrosse and then sell stuff at halftime and before and after the game. So it was like the best thing ever, like to get paid to watch SU lacrosse.
Yeah. What a gig.
Yeah,
good
right.
work if you can get it.
Yep.
What are some other venues that you want to cross off your list?
I mentioned some of them there. I'd love to go to the Nest in Halifax. That's definitely on the short list. I'd love to get to Calgary. In terms of college venues, like I've been to Homewood for games before, but I haven't been to Homewood for a Hopkins game. So I would love to go down to Homewood for like Hopkins, Maryland or something like that. I would love to go to the ILA up on, the reservation and go to like a Chiefs game up there. I think that would be a pretty special experience.
That team's stacked. So
yeah. It's tough to get there. The ride up there is not always easy, but I would love to go see that for sure.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that's really a lot of like the bigger ones.
Okay.
There's places I still love to go. Like I love going to Mikey Stadium. I love going to West Point. I think it's one of the best venues out there. The drive there is gorgeous. The venue is gorgeous. The stadium's great. Like there's not a bad seat in the house. I love going to Army games. So I'm sure I'll get to one. Like I said, the plan is to go to Army UNC here in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Almost not even a couple of weeks, like a week from now.
Yeah.
But I love going there. I liked going to Albany. I've been to Albany for PLL stuff, but I'd love to go catch an Albany game up there, like an actual Danes game up there. I guess, those are a lot of the spots where I'm dying to get to. I don't know if there's too many more. I mean, some of the newer ones, like I want to get out to Ohio State because the venue they built for the lacrosse team is brand new and looks like it's awesome. I think that would be a cool place to go. And the same with North Carolina. Like they have a lacrosse specific, place to play now. And I think going to see those in person is always going to be something I'd love to go see. I'd love to go to a Clemson women's game. Those Clemson facilities are nuts.
That looks really good.
Those facilities are insane. So I would like to go see a Clemson women's game, I think, too.
I was heartbroken when Alexa flipped, but then when I saw the facilities, I was like, "What are you gonna do?" Like,
I would have too.
Yeah. Like, come on.
What's the I'll ask you. What's the worst one you've been to?
My least favorite venue?
Yeah, I'm just curious.
Oh man, I don't want to put anybody on like too harsh of a blast here. I will say, and like this is, it's not venue specific. I don't like going out to Long Island. And it's tough because there's a lot of great lacrosse there. Like when I get there, I love Hofstra. When I get there, like Stony Brook's great.
It's the getting there. Yeah.
For where I live. And like when I go out there, most often I'll catch like a Hofstra game or two, probably a season. But usually when I go out there, I'm going out for like a PLL thing in the summertime. And if you're trying to get from Connecticut to Long Island in the summer on a Saturday, a ride that should be like an hour is like sometimes north of 2, just because it's just a tough ride. And I don't own a helicopter and I don't own a boat, so I can't do like if I had either one of those two things. It's 15 minutes away, 20 minutes away as the crow flies. But the ride out to Long Island sometimes is tough pill to swallow. I would go out to Riptide games when the Riptide were still here. On the way out there, it would take me 90 minutes. And on the way home, it's 11 o'clock at night. There's nobody on the road. I could be home in 50 minutes. It's just the whatever bridge you want to take, the Throgs Neck, the Whitestone. There's no right answer. It's always just kind of rough to get out there.
My wife and I used to previously work at SUNY Oneonta.
Yeah.
And she worked in admissions, and her territory was Nassau. And I went down and visited her once when she was traveling for work, and I was like, I'm never doing this again. This is awful. Like, it was so brutal. Oh, I don't know how people live down there, because I would just be pulling my hair out of my face and my head all the time.
Yeah. I've had people say, like, if you don't like driving, just take the ferry, because there's a ferry near me. They're like, you get the cooler, you take the ferry, all that. I was like I'm going to these games to work. Like, I can't.
Yeah.
Take the ferry. Like, take the ferry and get hammered on the ferry. I'm not doing that. Like, you got to talk to me.
Going back to being at the Dome, did you have a Dome dog?
I did not. I did not have a Dome dog. I had some other.
You blew it. You might as well not even have come.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
I enjoyed a bunch of the food and beverages in Club 44.
Yeah.
But I did not. Somebody said you got to get a Dome dog, and now I'm realizing that I never did, and I'm regretting it.
There's a chance on April 5th. I'll just say it that way. If you can make your return trip for Notre Dame. And there's probably going to be a bigger crowd. I'm just going to the rumors that Matt and I are hearing. I'll phrase it that way, Matt. I don't want to.
I'm sure it'll be a big crowd. I have a buddy here who is it's a friend of mine. His friend has a close family connection to somebody on Carolina. And we're talking about like going up with a big crew and getting like a house up there somewhere for the weekend for the Carolina game. And they were like, "You want to come to that?" I was like, I don't know. You can write about it. I was like, yeah, let me pitch that.
Yeah.
Let me pitch. Yeah, here's a USA Lax Bag. I'm going to take a bunch of guys who tangentially follow lacrosse kind of through their friends, and they want to go get hammered for the weekend, and they think it would be a good article. That's going to be my usual rate, and I need you to pick up the bar tab too.
Sold.
That could shape up to be a big game too.
Yeah, that could be a great game. Yeah, I'm making light of it, but it's not something I would rule out me doing as of right now. So
yeah. Yep.
So from the national perspective, I mean, I talked about it with a couple local people. The preseason ranking was number 2, and the consensus that the local people said was it was too high.
I had Q's lower than that in my preseason ballot. I think I had them at 4 or 5. But I think they belonged in the top 5 in the preseason for sure. Sure. Just based on like, the fact that they returned everybody and nobody else did. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like so many players left college lacrosse. So
yeah. Where did you rank them this week, Dan?
This week I had them, I'm going to say like 8 or 9, that area. I can tell you in 1 second. Let me pull up my ballot here. I do it on the pod every week, so I can just tell you.
Matt, see, we can finally criticize a pollster now. Now's our chance.
I had them at 9, and they came in the actual poll at 10.
Okay, that's not bad.
So they obviously we kind of talked about this. We'll do a recap with you in a sense. They blow out Jacksonville and Vermont to start the year, and then Towson's kind of, it was a quote test, the first test, like by numbers alone, obviously with the ranking, and then they go to Maryland, and then as you've seen now and as we've all seen, Maryland is really good. I think
Maryland
people
is
just
very
need
good.
to realize that. Lose to Maryland, then Harvard happens. What were your takes after those first couple of games from the national side?
So, them beating up on those teams, I think people thought, like you said, that Towson would be a game where maybe you learned a thing or two. I think we've all kind of seen since then that Towson is not really a game where you're going to learn a thing or two.
Right.
Them going down to Maryland, I think the weather sucked for that game too, right? Didn't the weather suck for that game?
Yeah.
I think that game, it was like you maybe kind of saw it coming a little bit because they were like, you're not in the dome and it's cold and it's raining and you have not, I don't know if you guys have practiced outside or not. Like I heard that they hadn't really been outdoors too much for it. So
that outside field they have next to where they practice indoors, that was ice. It was iced over, and Gary tried to get facilities to get it cleared off, and they couldn't get all the ice off, so they couldn't even practice outside at all that week.
Yeah, so like your first time being outdoors and that kind of conditions is basically a pregame, or if you do like a walk through the day before kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
It's tough to do that. So, and as we said, Maryland's a really good team. They match up with everybody well, let alone matching up with Syracuse really well. So there was that. The Harvard game, I thought they had the early lead on Harvard. They kind of raced out early, and there was like a step on the throat opportunity that maybe didn't quite get taken there. I think Jerry deserves some credit because he's a great coach, and he dialed up his defense. And they got some great play from a freshman goalie in the dome, which is not something you're always going to see. But Harvard's a really good team. Like Harvard, as we say right now, Harvard has the number one offensive efficiency in the country. Like they're really good. So maybe not a surprise there, but I will say after that Harvard game, I think they played Utah.
Yep.
And after Harvard, at that point, I was looking at Syracuse like, I know you're going to go out to Utah. I know you're going to win by 10 goals, and I don't care anymore. I don't. This does nothing for me. This does nothing to change my opinion of you, to make me elevate you to a higher level. I need you to beat somebody meaningfully good. Because at that point, they hadn't done it yet. We were into March, and it was like your wins are Jacksonville, Vermont, Towson, Utah. Like, you're telling me how many teams that aren't named Syracuse would still be ranked in the top 10 if that was their resume?
0. So I'll tell you the answer: 0, probably.
So you kind of wanted to see something big from them after that. That was my perspective anyway. I can only speak for myself. And then they delivered it. I think they delivered obviously a resounding win against Hopkins on the 9th.
I was gonna say, Matt, obviously you and I are local, so it's different for us, right? Because the Harvard one was Jimmy McCool got exposed. That's all we kept hearing here locally. And were they gonna make the change? I mean, Matt, we had that conversation, obviously. And now Jimmy has kind of bounced back. Like, he's had a couple of good games. Like, I think the defense has started to improve a lot since the Harvard game.
I don't think the Harvard game was enough to cost the kid his job.
Yeah.
He probably wasn't super great in the second half of that game. But as I said, like, Harvard's offense is really good.
Yeah.
He's not going to save every shot. That's a great shot that Harvard gets.
Right.
Sam King and Teddy Malone, these kids, like, they can shoot the hell out of the ball.
Yeah.
So, I don't think you switch goalies after that. And I think Syracuse probably has the best DC in college lacrosse with Coach Aderna, and not at all surprised to see him stick with his guy there. And I think it's going to be the guy the rest of the way. I think at this point, if you're switching goalies, like it's not a white flag, but like it's tough to consider yourself like a Memorial Day weekend kind of team if you don't know who your goalie is in mid to late March.
Yeah.
I was gonna say if they were gonna do it, Utah or Utah right around there would have been the way, right? Because Utah, you knew you were gonna beat. Then you
Yeah,
went
I mean,
out-
I wouldn't have done it. Period.
Yeah,
I
I'm
think
not
Jimmy-
saying I'm
yeah.
not saying obviously to do it. I'm just saying if you're gonna do it, you do it before now, like you're saying, because
Sure.
now you're running into the gauntlet, and now you put a freshman goalie, and you say, okay, you're going against UVA, who's going to throw everything at you. Notre Dame's obviously Notre Dame. Like you just run through the gauntlet now.
Right.
Yep.
Then Manhattan happens, and if you look at just the stats of Manhattan, I think it was like 73 shots or something like that.
It was pretty wild.
Yeah. And the Manhattan goalie had 24 saves. I believe it was 24 saves, I want to say.
Yeah. 24 saves.
Yeah, Connor Hapward's pretty good. I know when you see an 18-2 scoreline, you guys be like, man, that goalie must not be any good, but he is good. Manhattan can crank out the goalies, man. I'm telling you. Like,
is that Krebs? Is that where Krebs went? Right?
They went from Krebs to Joe Persico, who was an All-American who was just happened to be stuck behind Brendan Krebs, to now Connor Hapward, who you saw is insane. Absolutely, his hands are insanely fast. So they can coach up the goalies and find the goalies at Manhattan, and they're finding it's like the fun story. But Krebs wears number 0 because that's how many D1 offers he had. You know what I mean? Like they find goalies where people aren't looking for goalies, or they find these diamonds in the rough that get overlooked and turn them into literally into All-Americans.
Yep.
The only criticism I saw, and Matt, we kind of talked about it obviously a little bit, is the first quarter. Now, a lot of that was because of Manhattan. Like, let's just be fair to Syracuse was missing a lot of shots that normally they bury. Trey Deer misses some really close shots, which not really a big deal because he had a great game the rest of the way. Like, I think if the score is closer, the spotlight becomes a lot more on Syracuse. I'll just say it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I compared Syracuse to Alabama football in last episode when we had Rick Beardsley on, and that like people were so used to such a high level of success for such a long time that like now anytime it's not that, people just like panic. And like whether it was the Harvard game with Jimmy or like the first quarter on Tuesday, like people just want to instantly blow it up, right? And it's like, take a breath, people. Relax. Like the offense was moving. They were getting their shots off. Their goalie had a career day. Like, let's relax. Like, come on. Like, and then same thing with the Jimmy McCool game, like for the Harvard game. If you look at his full stats right now, he has 7.43 goals against and a almost 60 save percentage. Like, that's really good. Like, like,
right.
So it's
Harvard game is his only game under 50.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, there's only 2 games that have been 10 or over, and that's Harvard and Hopkins. Oh, in Maryland. 3.
Yeah.
So 3 out of 8 are over 10. The rest are 5, 5, 7, 5, and 2. Like, and granted, he's got a good defense in front of him too, but like I said, I think people are just so used to greatness for such a long time that it's like how Alabama football fans have been reacting the past 2 years now that Saban left. Like they haven't been as good, and people are like losing their minds. It's just
Dabo Swinney used to do that call-in show. I don't know if he still does it, but on like student radio or local radio down where Clemson is. Mm-hmm. Remember, they had like somebody called up and was just like, "You should give some of your salary back because like, we're not as good." And he was like, we were in the national championship game every year for like 3 years running, and this year like we've lost 3 games." And it was like that's where you get to. But like I remember him saying, he's like, this is just, it gets to be an expectation for a certain level when you have that kind of sustained success. And I think it's different for Q's because like it's Q's again, not breaking any news here. Q's hasn't been in Memorial Day weekend in a while. So it's not like people are like flipping out because they feel like they're not going to be back there. It's because they feel like this is the team that's going to get them back there. and you're freaking out, and you're like, the bar is the Final Four, and if we don't reach it, we've underachieved.
Right.
And it, like, that level of expectation hasn't been on the Q's team, at least, again, for the local guys, it might be, but at like the wider level, I don't think that's where the expectation has been for Q's for a while.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you kind of answered the question, but is that the expectation? Is it Memorial Day weekend from the national side? Because here it is, like, going in from last year where you win the first round. Now it's Memorial Day.
I think if you asked me in January, I'd say yes.
Okay.
I think having seen a couple of months of ball, and this isn't even just specifically about Q's, but I've kind of talked about this before with John Donville on College Lacrosse Show, but like every week when the poll comes out, just start going down it and see how long it takes you to arrive at a team where you're really totally certain that they can't make the Final Four. And it's not necessarily because like everybody else is super good,
right,
but like everybody is just gettable. Like everybody is beatable right now, with like maybe with the exception of Maryland, who looks like, again, like they match up well with everybody.
Right.
Everybody looks like there's a pathway to them maybe just not having their best game and losing to like everybody else that's in the top 13, 14 teams. So in that sense, I think it's very like wide open. Like everybody can get there because everybody's just kind of okay. And there's nobody who's like, we're used to like Notre Dame being, a absolute juggernaut.
Yeah.
2 years ago for sure. Last year, I think to an extent too. And then, you had like the Maryland team. It's one of the best teams ever. You had, this run of teams that were so clearly loaded and clearly dominant. And even beyond them, the teams right below them, you had Duke teams with attack lines that had Brennan O'Neill and Dyson Williams on them. Like those position units aren't around anymore. Like those team makeups aren't around anymore because COVID's over and all this other stuff. So, to say a team should be there for basically anybody right now, to me, I think is probably going too far. I don't think anybody you could say, like, if they don't make Memorial Day weekend, they weren't successful. And I don't think there's anybody where you could say they definitely are a team that's going to be there either.
I was going to say, if Maryland gets matched up against the right team, kind of what you're talking about. Now, obviously, nobody's been able to figure them out, but
yeah, Maryland's hard because as you like when you watch them play, it's tough to find the place where you feel like you'll find an advantage. Like they've shown they can run, they've shown they can play 6v6. They're great, at close defense. They're all the places where we were like, I don't know what they're going to do this year because they lost Ajax Zapatello. Well, they have Will Schaller. They lost Luke Weirman. Well, they have two guys who are great facing off. They have Logan McNaney in net, who right now is, probably looking like a, at worst second team All-American goalie. On the offensive end, it was like, well, who's going to be there? Who's going to be doing the heavy lifting? Eric Spano scores the most timely goals of anybody this year for me. Like when they need a big one, it's him getting it. And the guys they got in the portal, guys like Bryce Ford and Keegan and these guys, like they're all just fitting in just right. Like they all just kind of get it and do things correctly. So there's no obvious spot to me where you're just like, this is, if you're going to beat Maryland, this is the book on how to do it. They even were willing to run on Virginia. And the only way Virginia had a chance in that game is if Maryland decided to try and run. Maryland took some chances to try and run, and they still won the game anyway. Like, they just look like there's no easy way. There's no spot you can point to and say Maryland is deficient there.
Yeah. I will admit to, like, going into the season, like, I did not think they were going to be anywhere near where they are now. Like,
I mean, nobody did. They mentioned on the broadcast, but like, the IL crew, and I got to do it too, did our top 50 players coming into the season. I don't think Maryland had one. If they had one, it was Logan McNaney and like, around 50 or so.
Right.
Yeah.
Preseason All-Americans. We basically didn't have any Maryland kids, we didn't know who these guys were going to be. And now if you do it today, if you do the mid-season thing, I think Matt Kinnear just did a great thing on this for IL. These guys who were not preseason All-Americans, but will definitely be there in the mid-season team.
Yeah.
Will Schaller is going to be there for sure. Spanos is going to be in there. McNaney's going to be in there. Like, you can use either their polls, Larkin or McDonald. Like they have a ton of these guys. because that's just kind of what they do at Maryland.
What are your thoughts on the Tewaaraton? Because Sammy English obviously got mentioned as a watch person. And I think that's a question mark for Syracuse fans. I'll just phrase it that way. Matt, we've obviously talked about Sammy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say the lack of production because he's put up points, I guess. I just don't think he's the one that I would have thought. That's the way that I'll say it.
I think for the Tewaaraton itself, I think it's CJ Kirst and then a gap. Yeah. I think he widened the gap last week with smashing the hell out of Princeton. Basically, just like, he was
like 7 points, right? 5 and 2 or something like that.
Unreal in that game.
Yeah.
With Sammy, the trick with Sammy is that like if all you do is look at his production, you're going to undersell him.
Yeah.
I had mentioned it in the Hopkins game, but I think like nobody tracks. It's not like hockey where you track ice time and you track how many minutes somebody's on the field. Yeah. But I would have ventured Sammy was around the 50-minute mark out of 60 minutes in that game against Hopkins. He's a first-line midfielder. He plays defense. He takes wings. He's the man down midfielder. He punt return clears. Like it's
he's Matt Abbott 2.0.
It's a level of impact that goes so far beyond goals and assists. And when I pointed this out on social, somebody was like, "What do you mean? He had an assist and went 0 for 5 shooting." I was like, "This is why you need to watch the games,
right?
Because there's no way you could come away with Sammy English didn't have an impact on this game if you watched it. He was everywhere. He was so tired at the end. There's the clip of him like stretching out his calves with the ball in his stick, just like anything to just try and get his body right near the end and close that game out. So I think Sammy is an inclusion in it because of how the ways he impacts the game and just like literally on like minute count, like he never leaves the field. And there's just nobody else playing midfield like that right now, really.
As of right now, who would you put as your 5 finalists?
CJ, Sam King, Coulter Mackesy. Those are probably my clear like 3 guys. Beyond that, I don't know. Some people are pushing for McNaney. I don't know about that. That would be a lot to me. Like the goalie never win it. If Liam Eneman didn't win it, is a goalie ever going to win it? I don't know.
Yeah.
I was actually just going to ask you, are we ever going to get to the point where a goalie wins it?
Like I was saying, if Liam didn't win it last year, I don't know when a goalie is going to win it. Yeah. It's the same kind of thing where like, Baptiste didn't win it at the end. It was like, if Baptiste didn't win it, nobody's going to win it. I don't know. Players like Jackson Eicher at Army have been super productive. And I don't know if he's going to be a Tewaaraton finalist, but just on like production, his numbers have been insane and he's been really good. I think we all kind of thought he would be really good. And he definitely has been. If you want like fun, like defender type guys, I think like defenseman in the country. And if you want to put a poll in there to mix one in, I would still make it Sean Light. I know he hasn't been maybe as headline stealing, but this is another thing we've kind of talked about with on college lacrosse ship when it comes to guys like goalies and defenders being up for the Tewaaraton. A lot of it, I think, can come down to playing games on national TV. And if you're a guy who doesn't, then people don't see you as much because we just don't have, especially for defenders, like we just still don't have a reasonable metric and stat to like measure you by. We still just tend to sort by caused turnovers and ground balls and pick the guy at the top. And for a lot of defenders, like Bobby Van Buren's going to stack zeros across the board in a lot of his matchups, but he's probably a first team All-American. Like he's not going to do a whole lot of like stat damage, but my God, he's going to erase somebody. So,
that's how Brian always talks about Carter Rice. Brian Nozlax, he always says that about Carter Rice, that he's not the short stick mid that scores goals, but he shuts down guys.
Yeah. I think for me, like the clear kind of group for me, I would say is CJ and Sam and Mackesy, I think are the guys. Chris Kavanaugh can definitely get in there. I think Notre Dame dropping a couple of games and the way that offense has looked is at times has been inconsistent, and that's probably going to like hurt his case a little bit. Joey's top 5 in the country in points. So, if his production, stays up near the top of the country, you wouldn't be probably shocked to hear his name in there. But being up for the Tewaaraton also, I think requires like a Heisman moment. You identify that like the play or the sequence where somebody like wins the award or puts themselves in it. I don't think Joey's had one.
Yeah.
I think you can start pointing to moments for like CJ and Sam a little bit more, whether it's Sam's game in the Dome or CJ this past week against Princeton, setting a career record for goals at Cornell. Those are things you point to and be like, there's a Tewaaraton kind of sequence or plays for those guys. And, some of these other guys, I think we're still waiting to see it from them.
Yep.
What are the national thoughts on Johnny Mullen? Because obviously he's high praise here. Last year he sits behind Cone, and now he is the guy.
I think he's a good player. I mean, I think his Hopkins game was a good testament to his ability to kind of be resilient and to adapt. I think he lost the first 7 faceoffs in that game and still ended the game. I don't know if he was at 60%, but he was.
I think he's 60.
He was pushing into the high 50s, I think. So a testament to him to go. Again, Logan Callahan wins the first 7. He violated on some. Clearly didn't have it early, but kind of stuck with it. So having games like that are important. I believe having faceoff depth is also important. So I think if I'm a Q's fan, I'm a little concerned that we only have one guy taking draws. I think having more than one guy taking draws is something you want to feel good about. Q's last year, as you said, you had Mason too. And if Mason violated or if Mason was struggling with a matchup or you just wanted to keep their other solo guy like a little more off balance, having 2 guys you can do that with is important. And I don't see depth at the faceoff spot for Q's. So that would be my concern at the position. But I think, Johnny's a good player.
Matt, you got anything else? Or you?
I
know you have your notes, so I'll just say it that way. I know.
Yeah, I guess my final question for you, Dan, is like looking at the rest of Q's season. How do you think they fare as of right now? With what we know?
Well, I think this week's game is a good one. Colgate and Q's is fun. People have already said, last year's game was a penalty fest, whatever it was, 18, 19 penalties.
Yep.
Colgate took an unnecessary roughness with 2 seconds left in the game. That's the nature of the way that game got played last year. Yeah. So I think that's fun. I think that's makes for an interesting game. So Colgate in the Dome is good. I think at Virginia is an interesting game because Virginia will try and run. And I think there's plenty of players and style and inclination on Syracuse team to say, yeah, let's run. Like we're a team that can run. Let's do it.
Yeah.
But if I was ever playing Virginia right now, I would do everything to just say 6v6 and then 6v6 and then just, play.
Yeah.
Forget between the lines. Virginia can't play 6v6 at either end right now. So just don't let them run. And Virginia's going to be in kind of like wounded animal mode because to save their season, they probably need to win like 3, 4 ACC games. Like they're going to be desperate. Desperate UVA is probably kind of scary. Lars, is Lars. So I think, the remaining schedule I think can go well. You got some good non-cons left in Colgate and Cornell. The Cornell game's a good neutral site game. I think that's out on Long Island somewhere. So like you got some good ones left. You got Notre Dame is coming to the Dome, which I think will help you. So I think really you just want to make sure you don't you want to make sure you get healthy. You need Finn Thompson to get healthy and get back in the lineup. And you want to make sure you kind of avoid anything like catastrophic happening to you. But look, you don't want to like lose out through the ACC. But I think notching, I want to make sure I win one of these games at Virginia, at Duke, right? Like go on the road in conference, get a big win on the road as something that you're going to need to do. Because like, I know the bit is that it's always 70 and sunny in the Dome. Like sooner or later, you're going to have to leave. Like you have aspirations to get through the playoffs, get Memorial Day weekend. That's not going to be at the Dome. You got to be ready to play at other places. And I think, good road tests, good road performances against Virginia and Duke, and then neutral sided at Cornell are what I'd be looking for.
Who's your, I'll say it this way, ACC or the Field national champion?
The Field.
Okay. That's fair. I have to ask.
The Field has Maryland in it. The Field has, the Big Ten in it. the field has Cornell in it, has Princeton in it, so
I know it's a dumb question, but I have to obviously.
I will take no. I mean, like, look, taking the ACC isn't crazy easy. You have a 2-time defending champ. You have Carolina, who's a top 5 team. You have Duke, who is doing their Duke thing and getting a whole lot better in late March. They're doing you're finding, like, all of a sudden Max Sloat and Graham Blake look like superstars, and it was like in February they were role players, and we know they're going to get improved roles and all that. But this past week they both balled out. So it's that time of year for Duke to do their Duke thing. You guys are going to get them. Yeah, you guys are going to get them in late April when they'll be ramping up towards the postseason and looking more dangerous. So like the ACC being saying that's where the title team is going to come from is not crazy by any means.
Well, I don't think I have any more questions.
Who's the other team that the ACC needs to add for the auto bid? I was going to say that's the last one I got is the auto bid question.
It's tough because it's like there's the answer with like your heart. Like if I don't have to think about money and anything else, and like none of that stuff matters, and I just get to just like wave a magic wand and poof, there's men's lacrosse there, I would bring it back to BC. I think that that them being varsity before, having some history and it being in an area where a lot of good lacrosse gets played. They have a strong national fan base anyway. There's some cool, like, kind of ready-made rivalry kind of stuff happening there in the ACC. I would try and bring back BC. Otherwise, if you want to get nuts, like the ACC is a conference, like, conferences make no sense anymore. So like whatever, like Stanford's in the ACC now, right? Like, why not?
Yep.
So
yeah,
Stanford, sure. But like yeah. I would pair it up with a place that has a successful women's team already. So like Stanford, BC, Louisville, Clemson, like those make sense to me.
Yeah.
I'm sure people would clamor for NC State as another team that was varsity at one time, Carolina as a not even to me an emerging hotbed, just a flat out hotbed at this point. Great ball gets played in Carolina. So.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. I think Matt, I think I'm good with all mine as long as you don't have anything else. That was everything I had on my notes.
Let's make sure we plug everything that you do, Dan. So Sticks In.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Right. And then what's the name of the show with Donville?
College Lacrosse Show.
College Lacrosse Show. And then Sticks In. Make sure you guys listen to Dan. He produces a lot of great stuff, whether it's his writing or his podcast. So thanks for joining us, Dan. We appreciate you taking time.
Thanks for coming on for a little bit of time, and we're glad to finally get you on. Like I said to you in the message, I had completely forgotten to message you, and then I was like, crap, I need to message him and try and figure out a time to do this. So I appreciate
happy to
you
do it,
last
man.
minute.
And if you're ever back here, let us know.
I'll be back at some point. I'm not only going once, so I'll be back at some point.
Yeah. So as always, I like to end it with the Go Orange. So
Go Orange, let's go.
Yeah.